Hey Ruth, how's it going today?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. Glad to be chatting with you about a banquet.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah?
This is all very new to me. It's very yeah, it's a new world, but I'm enjoying it. It's going
Uh,
okay.
good, good. I'd love to start with just kind of maybe the first 5 minutes of the film almost, because there's so much anxiety to it from the very beginning, with the gasping for air to the dentist drilling, which I hate dentists. So could you talk about like creating that atmosphere from the very start?
Happily, yes. It was really important to me to set the tone from the offset. And so, in the original script, the death of the father wasn't part of it. It was something that, well, the absence of the father had was really quite unexplained, but it was something that happened in the history of the film. And I kind of knew that I wanted to understand what this family's wound was, at the beginning. So we, Justin wrote this amazing scene. And I think, that we knew that we wanted it to kind of link somehow to the idea of consumption. So, we thought a lot about how this guy might go about ending his own life, and that being wonderfully gross and violent. But yeah, I think, when I pitched the film to financiers at the beginning of the process, I kind of said that it was important to me that at no point the audience felt safe or secure. It should be a very bumpy, uncomfortable ride. And that kind of brand of anxiety and dread that I hope permeates the film is kind of what I've used my short film career to hone. So yeah, it's funny because I'll say I hope you enjoy the film, but it's really not something to enjoy. It's not very pleasant.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed it. But yes,
That in the right.
that anxiety is there throughout, especially with how you shoot the food and how
Yeah.
it's like subconsciously off-putting. So could you talk about how you shot the food for the film and then also what went into picking the foods for the film?
Sure. Well, the food, I mean, yes. So the food was, you know, something that I knew it's the source of horror for Betsy ultimately. So if you're thinking about it from her perspective, and then if you look at it through a lens of a character who may have an eating disorder, then the food is the enemy. The food's horrific. And yourself, like even if you're not a person that's gone through disordered eating, if you're not hungry and somebody presents you with food, it's gross. And I think I was really interested in the biological horror of food, and the fact that a lot of the food that's on screen could go bad. There's something about that vanitas theme, food itself, that's something that I'm always interested in. But in terms of the way the food's presented on screen, all credit goes to the production designer, Sophia Stockel, because as much as this is a family who are fairly wealthy and quite sort of stylish, and Holly puts a lot of care into how she prepares food, it's a really low budget film. So what she was able to do with the food itself, and to make it look the way it did on the budget she had, is absolutely phenomenal in my opinion. And
For
she
sure.
essentially designed a menu. She sort of explained to me, I had certain placeholders in the script for food items that I wanted. Like, I knew I wanted Isabel to be eating something that would drip and like blood, like on the floor at the beginning when she bites that chicken thigh. But there was moments, for example, in the ice rink, where I had written that Sienna who plays Holly, sorry, should be
No
eating
worries.
something equally like gross and creamy. I think I'd written or suggested that we have coleslaw. And Sophia came to me and said, "Yeah, I get what you're going for there, but like we're on location that day, away from the house. That's really, really messy. She's sitting down. The way resets, costume, that's going to be a nightmare. This is a woman that would take sushi to the ice rink." And I loved it. I loved that idea that, what it says about Holly and kind of how she values food, and how she enjoys food. So like on one hand you've got somebody refusing it, and then you've got Holly who puts such care into the food she makes for her children, and Isabel who loves eating it. So yeah, the food's such a big part of the film, and was a big part of my kind of visual conception of how we would shoot. Dave and I, my cinematographer, really
Okay.
like going in tight on stuff. So like knowing, we knew we would be going in like really close on this textural stuff, and that hopefully we could make that link to the sort of biological horror there as well.
Awesome. Now I've got to ask, I'm a picky eater. So are you eating like half of these foods, or like is this all good stuff for you?
I have historically been a very picky eater. I was the child that wouldn't eat things if they touched on a plate, you know.
Okay.
And no, really, I've had a bad relationship with food. And I also have had, you know, period of disordered eating where I didn't eat for a couple of years. So I completely understand, you know, Betsy's aversion to food. But I don't know. I mean, there were certain things that when we were on set that like, when she made the avocado on toast, we were all salivating. We were like, oh, I really want to eat that. And then the bacon. And I remember at the end of the bacon scene, like they had this bucket of, well, not bucket, but bowl of bacon at various stages of cookedness. And I was like, I'm definitely going to have a bit of that at the end. And they wouldn't let me have it. And it was because of COVID. And it was like, we were, I mean, I don't know, sorry to vegans, but the room was, you know, humming with this beautiful smell of cooking bacon and nobody was allowed to eat it. It was slightly torturous.
No, so you couldn't eat any leftovers?
No, absolutely not. No,
Dang.
it was just, yeah, it was just that was one of the things that COVID did to production, was it really slowed down the resets for food, because we had to be extremely careful around anything that was going to be consumed by an actor, basically. So it was, yeah, there was a lot of, and you know, we were right, we were one of the first films to shoot coming out of the second lockdown in the UK. And we didn't have any insurance. So we had to be hyper vigilant with everything.
Okay. Oh, geez. Changes a lot, eh? I think my last food related one is just the fact that Holly, she is such, her love language seems to be food, which is very, very interesting. So can you talk about that aspect?
Yeah, well? I love that you used that phrase, because that was basically how a producer described it right back at the beginning. And it's a language I'm familiar with. You know, my family are really into food, and my dad and my brother, like if they have a conversation, if they catch up, the first 10 minutes is what they ate for the last week. So I really understood that, you know. But yeah, I think, you know, with Holly, we wanted, obviously she is the, you know, she's the mother, she's the caregiver. She wants to give her children good nutrition. That's in a nutshell like her job, to keep her kids alive and to keep them eating. But she definitely, I think, goes to the extreme with it. I think, you know, we decided that maybe Holly had creative profession, that maybe she was a photographer, that maybe it never made the screen, but Sienna and I discussed that potentially she was a photographer of food, or somebody that, you know, cooked food professionally. So it was natural for her to make, you know, dinner an event. And I think also in the wake of the loss of the husband, there's definitely for Holly, you know, ceremony and getting the family together around the table, and eating together. And I think, you know, that's familiar for a lot of young families, is kind of, you know, that's when you get their attention and their time with the kids, is kind of, we sit and we eat together, and then you can go and do what it is you want to do individually. But yeah, she cares a lot about what her kids put in their bodies.
Now, you had mentioned production design, and just talking about your production designer. I also noticed from your filmography that on your short films, you worked as a production designer. So can you talk about how that has like influenced maybe your visual style or just your directing style in general?
Absolutely. I mean, it's, you know, obviously there's, you know, all facets of how a film comes together are of, you know, importance to the director to understand and to have a hand in. But I kind of, you know, really, I guess, upfront about the fact that I am not a technical director. I'm not someone that talks camera language in the same way that other directors do. I work with a cinematographer who understands my language, and that's wonderful. But I am very, very in tune with what's happening in production design, costume and makeup. And I think that's got a lot to do with the fact that, you know, when you start making films and you have to wear every hat, you know, so you're, you know, especially at student filmmaking level, you know, you are producing your own films, you are, you know, taking roles on other students' films that you don't necessarily want to do down the line, but, you know, you collaborate. And any role I did in that capacity was always a design role or a costuming role, rather than, you know, doing anything on the technical side or production side. I was, you know, I liked creating the room, and I still have I was a rubbish production designer because I really just wanted to direct the film. And when I realized that, I was like, I have to stop doing this, because basically I'm just trying to direct the film through production design, which I suppose is part of the job. But no, I really, I mean, I value my relationships with my heads of department so much, but it's extremely important that my designer and my DP are on exact same wavelength as me, you know, and that there's a trifecta there. So it's a, you know, all the relationships are a pleasure, but I'm going to communicate more with those heads of department than possibly others, because I speak their language better, I think.
Oh, great. And I'm still chuckling in my head, you calling yourself like a rubbish production designer because you just wanted to direct it.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. It was, you know, it was just kind of, you know, I was really exacting my vision. I was working with directors that maybe just weren't as, I don't know, you know, you get all different kinds of directors. You get directors that you know, for them, that the experience of working with actors is the highest priority, or how, you know, the technicality of how they realize the film visually is a priority. And, you know, and it's not always like we fall into those categories definitively. It's that there's a mixture of all of that. But I'm certainly someone who is very, very, you know, attracted to the process of working with actors, and very attracted to how you create the space that the actors live in. And I want everything to be beautiful. So
for someone like me who's still like really learning about directing and what makes a good director, that's very fascinating, just hearing you like everything you work on. So with that said, what was it like working with the cast for the film?
It was a joy. It really was. And that may sound cliche, but it was true. It was like, it was a pleasure, you know, and we didn't have much rehearsal time at all. And that was a combination of stuff to do with COVID and budgetary constraints.
Sure.
So a lot of the conversations were happening on set, and each of them worked very differently. But I loved the experience, and I say wholeheartedly, like, it felt too short. Like, I would have loved to have dig deeper with each of these characters. And I would love, you know, I would have loved to have had a lot more time on set with Lindsay Duncan, who plays June. I would have liked to explore more of Isabel's character, because I just feel, you know, Ruby is electric. And I definitely, you know, want to regroup with Sienna and Jess down the line in different things. They are such talented individuals and such generous performers. And that's who I like to work. I mean, I always say that I like to work with nice people, like good people, and people who are like going to be as generous of spirit as I will be. And, you know, that makes for good collaboration, I think.
With that, I have to ask about Jessica Alexander, and just she has some very intense scenes here acting wise. So what was it like for her performing those scenes? And also, did she do much research on like cases of enlightenment, like getting mannerisms and such?
No, and I think Jess wouldn't mind me being honest about that. Sure. Jess, she's not like a cerebral performer in that way. She just lives it, you know what I mean? And she's incredible. Like, directing her was like one of the easiest things I've ever done, because somehow at the end of a take, if it wasn't quite right, it was almost like you could communicate. It was like she recalibrated and just did exactly what I wanted. She's very, you know, she's not a trained actor, but she's a natural performer, and she's a natural storyteller. And she, you know, she has made work before. This was her first feature. She's since made more features. She's made a lot, actually, in the short space of time. But she just threw herself at it. And so, you know, the scenes where she's being, you know, she's exerting herself physically, she is exerting herself physically. It's method acting in a way, but it's not a conscious intellectual method acting where she's deciding to become Betsy. She just kind of embodied it. And she did exhaust herself. She did lose her voice. She did really strangle herself. I mean, lots of stuff that, you know, I couldn't have demanded of her, but she gave me the gift of it, and it looks great. And I'm always going to, like, you know, I get really turned on the closer it gets to reality. So the fact that she was willing to go to these places was, you know, I'm very grateful for, but really excited by, because I just knew that she could be pushed, and I could trust that she would stop when she needed to stop. Okay. So that, yeah, I think there was an understanding there. What I would say is I'm not sure down the line that Jess will necessarily go to those extremes. You know, I think like it was her first film and she had nothing to compare it to in terms of, you know, the type of stuff she was doing. She obviously has experience, but maybe she'll protect her voice more if she's on a longer gig down the line. But okay. I think, yeah, she's on fire.
Yeah, I saw her in Glass House at Fantasia, and maybe a bit of a pun, but I'm looking forward to watching her star rise.
Yes, no, I think it will. I think you're absolutely right. And I'm really, where did you watch Glass House?
It was at Fantasia, which is a festival in Montreal.
Okay, I need to. Are you Canada?
Yeah, I'm in Ottawa.
I thought you said you made a sound earlier that made me think you said A.
I might have said A. Yeah.
You said A. But yeah, no, she is, and I mean, obviously, she's got her part in The Little Mermaid coming up as well, and you know, she's gonna go stratospheric, I think, and she deserves to.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to watching whatever you do next, and I'd like to thank you for chatting with me about A Banquet.
Thank you so much, Daniel.